Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest, Scott Aukerman, has been a part of some of the funniest comedy projects over the last couple decades. From Mr. Show to Comedy Bang Bang to Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, for which he has served as co-creator and director since its inception in 2008. Now it's become a feature film on Netflix. Let's take a look.
Welcome to another edition of Between Two Ferns, and my guest today is Matthew McConaughey.
Good to be here, Zach.
Of all the things you can win an Oscar for, how surprised are you that you won one for acting?
Here we go.
I noticed that you're wearing a shirt. Is everything okay?
And you have a major leak in here.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. See what's going on with these pipes.
Dude, don't do that.
Help! 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 Who is the idiot? They installed the sprinkler system!
Well, they turned the sprinklers on.
You killed Matthew McConaughey.
He's dead?
He's brought back to life, but he was momentarily dead. You owe me. Go across the country, get 10 more episodes of Between Two Ferns.
10, your dumb internet talk show, and you give me a network talk show. I'm a white man, and I'm straight, and I deserve it. Green as ever. Is the width off to you? We're taking Between Two Ferns on the road. My guest today is Benedict Cumberbatch. Benefit Lumberjacks.
Benedict Cumberbatch.
That's what it is. I read online that you're very private and declined to answer questions that make you feel uncomfortable. Is that true? And how old were you when you got your first period? Bradley Cooper co-wrote, directed, and starred in A Star Is Born.
I hear it's great.
Are you hoping that will open doors for other hot idiots? I don't know if I'm gonna get these shows out. We don't have any money. We're hungry. We're gonna order the clam strips.
How big are they?
Have you ever seen a chicken strip?
I've never seen a chicken wear clothes.
Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits and ding-dongs.
I'm just curious about the pathology behind this.
Some people would say we're the crazy ones, but I think we're geniuses. Blue.
I love your show.
What if we take this upstairs?
What about John Legend?
He's probably at home polishing his EGOT.
Is that what he calls his penis? Between Two Ferns, the movie. Is it gonna be in theaters? Not in theaters. Not in theaters.
Scott Aukerman!
Hey, Dong Man. Hello. I have one fan here.
There's a moment in the credits. The movie's been out since Friday, so we can talk in detail a little bit about
Yeah,
what
of
happens.
course, yeah, we can do all the
things.
spoilers now. It's been out 3 days. Everyone has seen it by now, obviously.
I think that's the assumption with content these days. If it's not watched in 3 days, it's not going to get watched by
Yeah,
someone.
it's like fish. It spoils after 3 days.
Exactly. One of the moments in the bloopers, I think he's sitting with Tessa Thompson, where he says, "I can't believe this is a real thing."
Yeah.
And she thinks he means the interview with her, and he means, no, the whole project that all of you are undertaking.
Yes, he means, yeah, just Between Two Ferns generally. He can't believe that anyone cares about this.
How often did you guys feel that way while on the set, while making this small thing that you started in 2008 as like a part of a sketch show that was a pilot that didn't even get picked up, that you then just kind of threw on the internet, has now become a feature film and has also been used to campaign for presidential candidates or sign people up for health care?
It's nuts. I mean, we just started it just to do something funny, and amuse ourselves and put it up on the internet. Didn't think anyone cared. In fact, I think Funny or Die, we asked them if they wanted it, and they said, well, we think we can give you like half a day on the front page. And, and then suddenly everyone's watching it and doing the movie. We did some crazy stuff in the movie and building giant sets and water towers and all this expensive stuff. And yeah, it's just crazy that it really was born out of us goofing around in a basement, which is where we shot the very first one.
The first one was with Michael Cera, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we did it in the basement of this building. Actually, weirdly enough, right below where we edited the movie, 10 years later. So we edited the movie right above the basement. Yeah.
What's interesting about the first one going back is that there is a kind of progression as to like what the shows are, how they work, and who Zach is in them, because he assaults Michael Cera in the first episode, which he doesn't end up necessarily doing that much in the later ones.
Yeah, the first one we just truly improvised it. We had nothing written. And we just, those guys knew each other. They were friends, and, you know, Michael Cera is really good at that, you know, being put upon energy. So just we, you know, improvised for an hour and a half. And then the more we started doing them, the more we realized, like, we don't know these people personally. We're going to need to actually write jokes for these. So they became a little more written. And then at a certain point, I think we did the Steve Carell one. And Zach wanted to do this physical thing where he is saying, he's in Steve Carell's face, and he says, "I'm not that fat," and then he sits on the chair and it breaks underneath him. And that was so funny to us. And then Bradley Cooper also hit Zach in the face for the end of one. The Cooper narrative I wanna get to, but Zach wanted to do a physical thing every single episode after that, and so we kept having to come up with huge physical gags, which for the movie, you know, we're putting together all of the episodes from the movie. We realize we don't need those anymore. Like, just going out on a joke is actually fine.
Oh, wow. One of the things I love about Between Two Ferns, and I think I love about Zach as well, is that he's not above a cheap joke, like saying, I'm not
he's
fat.
the cheapest.
Yeah. I mean, he's so good at nailing them, and they work perfectly on this level of, like, that's funny that you would go that cheap, and is also just funny.
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason we did the movie was because we were here in New York making a Comedy Central special, which was a half-an-hour special that had interviews with Tina Fey and Richard Branson and Jon Stewart. But those interviews took up maybe 14 minutes, and we needed another 7 to fill the time. So we were out here on the street, and we were just improvising. Just, you know, Zach would think of a joke, and I'd set up a camera, and we would film it. And that included stuff like, we did a ton of fake bloopers for that. And it was stuff like he would see a mailbox and say, "Set up a camera, I'm going to go run into it and make my pants fall down around my ankles," you know? And that was why we did the movie. We were like, this is so fun. We should do more of these terrible types of jokes.
So one of the things that is missing from the movie, and I will say I was kind of looking forward to it and hoping for it, which is the Bradley Cooper narrative between the two of them. Yes. But it begs the question, because within that narrative, on the Between Two Ferns internet show, Zach Galifianakis is the movie star Zach Galifianakis, and they have a relationship as scene partners in the movies together, whereas in this movie, he is not that Zach Galifianakis.
He's not that Zach Galifianakis, although I will say that we shot versions of the movie where he was that Zach Galifianakis. Really? So, because I didn't quite know if people were going to understand the whole, you know, parallel Earth kind of situation where Zach is not the person who starred in The Hangover. So we had a version of the movie where he did star in The Hangover, but the reason that he is so broke and doing the show still is because he's made terrible investments, which there was a whole Andy Daley scene with him playing his accountant and talking about all the things he invested in that were terrible. And it was one of the funniest. It was they did a 45-minute take with no cuts. That was just one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And
how dare you deny me that scene, sir? How dare you deny me that?
I put it in the movie, and every single person was like, "I don't get it. Wait, I thought he was just a non-famous version of Zach, but now he's..." And it just confused people, so we cut it out. But yeah, the Bradley Cooper thing probably wouldn't have fit into that because they're so contentious on the actual web videos. Although we did try to get Bradley, and at a certain point, one of the jokes of making this movie is we kept going back and reshooting stuff. And so we shot a whole bunch of stuff a year ago, and then I said I need to shoot some more stuff, and we did that. And then we went back in February and we shot more, like shot a lot of what turned out to be the end of the movie. And then a few months later we shot even more, and at that one we were like, all right, well, we'll see you at the reshoots, just joking around. And literally like 2 days later, Bradley Cooper called up and said, "I really want to be in the movie." And I was like, okay, and we tried to get it set, and then he had to back out at the last second. But
I was hoping you denied him, that you rejected him.
It would have come to that, because like everyone kept saying, like, we can't shoot more, we have to come out. But when Bradley Cooper says he wants to do the movie, just like everyone suddenly bends over backwards and says, okay, yeah, we can shoot more, yeah, definitely.
So now he really only exists in the movie as like a line to John Hamm, which was did him making A Star Is Born open the door for more hot idiots, you think?
Yeah, exactly. But
you heard from Bradley about that line?
Well, Zach had to call Bradley about that line, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. The trailer came out and he said, "Oh no," he says to me, "Oh no, I forgot to call Bradley to warn him about that." And it's interesting because there are some jokes in the movie that I've totally forgotten about that I should probably warn some people, about. But yeah, it's one of those things. I personally don't think Bradley Cooper cares, and I know he thought it was funny, but Zach feels really bad.
I mean, unless he's become a completely different person than the times he was on the show already, because the times he was on the show, all of the jokes were about him being nothing but a hot guy.
Yeah, just a vapid, handsome celebrity.
Yeah, and him desperately trying to prove. I mean, that's what I loved about his appearances all the time, was that he was pulling off this character of this deeply insecure hot guy who wanted so badly. I think in the awards one, he talks about wanting to be part of a community.
Yes. No, the first one we ever did with him, it was literally the Thursday before The Hangover came out on Friday, and we drove to Las Vegas to do it because they were doing their press junket at Caesar's Palace, where a lot of the movies set, right? So we did it in like a Caesar's Palace hotel room. And our director and editor, Dan Strange, drove the ferns that we were using in every episode to Las Vegas, because for some reason we used the same ones. And that's why they're all
Is that where the idea came from for the movie, that they're always driving the ferns places?
It's definitely from that, because we had to take care of these ferns. They're dying in that Bradley Cooper episode, and that's the last time we ever used them. But he was cracking us up so much because he was doing this fake junket speak where Zach would insult him, and then it would he'd go off on a story about some Hollywood story, and it was really, really funny. I mean, he's a super funny guy.
So, Lauren Lapkus has said, and you've said that you're improvising a lot. I mean, when you showed up to a set, are basically the interviews the most scripted part of the movie?
I would say, to give you a real answer, the most scripted parts of the movie, there are a few scenes that were scripted, because the actors involved, for instance, Will Ferrell, he would prefer to improvise on top of a script that actually exists. He wants to memorize the script and then improvise on top of it instead of just purely improvising stuff.
Well, also his character is in so many ways the exposition. I mean, I mean that in a good way, but he's setting up the narrative and the story of the movie.
So for most of the script, it was just a paragraph that sort of described what would maybe happen in the scene with a few jokes of maybe say this joke if you feel like it. So that was pretty much every scene except for, a few here and there where the people involved wanted the script. But I would say, the Between Two Ferns episodes, though, are really improv too, because the most Zach has is he has a paper that we go over right beforehand of jokes that usually myself and the other joke writers will write 5 pages of jokes, and he'll just check the ones that he actually likes. And a lot of times he has no idea why any of them are funny because he doesn't know the person that he's talking to, because he doesn't pay attention to pop culture. So I'll be there saying okay, well, Jerry Seinfeld and Kesha just had a run-in backstage where he didn't recognize her, and that's why that joke is funny. And he'll go, oh, interesting, But so usually he has those jokes. He'll have a page of jokes, but he's improvising constantly apart from those jokes. So really, there's not a lot in the movie that was technically scripted.
Yeah, I have to say, I've never watched a Between Two Ferns and felt bad for any of the celebrities that he was insulting, because it always felt part of the joke. But there was one person that you guys got me with, and it was Keanu Reeves. For some reason, that scene, I felt very protective of this extremely rich lifelong celebrity.
By the way, Keanu Reeves was having a ball. He came in, and every star that is in the movie or we've ever done a Between Two Ferns with, I have to sort of meet them before they go out there and talk them through what is about to happen.
Of course, we're going to say every mean thing about you.
But a lot of people don't even know that. A lot of people have never seen the show, and so you're oh, okay, it's a show where Zach is going to be mean to you and have insults, and you can't see the insults ahead of time because we want a genuine reaction from you, And I started to go into that with Keanu. I was so these are kind of mean questions or roast questions? And he goes, yeah. I know. And he's like, that's why I'm here. And just like smiled, and we were like, oh, okay, this guy gets it. And then he was great. There was a whole subplot in his that we cut out where he was promoting a fake movie called Shotgun Promises. And he was so funny. He was like, Zach was like, all right, describe your movie. And he got off on this thing where he would never describe the plot. He would just talk about its influences. He'd be like, it's Kurosawa meets Scorsese with like a touch of Tarantino, of course. and he just kept naming filmmakers over, for like 5 minutes. It was really, really funny. But
How much did you cut out of this movie?
so we shot so much because we didn't know what would be in it. We literally had no idea what people would like or not like.
Was that part of the pitch when you brought it to Netflix? Were you like, this is how we're going to make it, and we might need reshoots, or we're definitely going to need reshoots?
I looked at Spinal Tap, and I read a lot about Spinal Tap, and I listened to the director's commentary, and I watched all the deleted scenes, and they shot it like an actual documentary. Like they just set up these things to do. And people riffed around them, and they have so much footage. And so I was really inspired by that, and I thought, let's do it like that. Let's build a fake public access station. And Lauren, if you bring up something in your interview where you're talking about, that you have to draw everything that Zach does all day in order for him to understand it, let's go shoot that then, if you just riff that in the middle of it.
That's what Guest does as well.
Yeah.
In his stuff, I think.
Yeah,
too.
and so we set out to do that, but what ends up happening is you're on set and you don't know whether a scene belongs early in the movie or if it belongs late in the movie. So I ended up like covering my bases and shooting multiple versions of every scene. So for instance, in the movie, there's a scene where Zach has blown all of their money at a hotel by running up a whole bunch of charges. That was the last take, and I didn't even plan on doing that because originally his crew had blown all the money. And there were all these things where Cam, his cameraman, had been photocopying books on his Kindle, trying to sell them, and not realizing like it costs more to photocopy your Kindle than it does to sell these books. There's all this stuff, and at the last second, I was like, I see a version of this movie where this is like the halfway turn point in the movie where everyone turns against you. Could you just do one where you're the bad guy in it? And that was like take 7, I think, and that's the one we ended up using. So it really was one of those things where I didn't know what. So not only if you put every scene back to back, not even including all of the Between Two Ferns episodes or the fake public access shows that we did, it would be about a 5-hour movie, right? And we got to get it down to under 90. So
Release the Aukerman cut.
and the Snyder cut, of course.
Oh yeah, of course.
Definitely. We all feel very similarly.
That's where this
about that,
conversation's going.
yeah.
Like a joke for the 2 people who know that that's a film Twitter Snyder cut thing. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry. But yeah, it was interesting. There were just like subplots that we had to throw out. I mean, there's a whole huge, and it was hugely important to the movie for a long time. There's a whole thing with his family. With his mom, his dad, his brother. His brother is played by Luca Jones, who also has a giant beard. And they popped up throughout the movie, and they were his motivation and stuff like that. And when we started testing the movie, we realized that people didn't really need that much motivation for him. They get it. He wants to have a talk show, and that's about all it was. So we ended up cutting so much of the movie out.
Do you feel like, thinking about Spinal Tap or even something like Waiting for Guffman, those 2 movies are in some ways a different sensibility and a different tone than I think what you're doing with Between Two Ferns. There's something much more closer to what I referenced to you backstage, which is like a sort of late 90s, early 2000s mainstream comedy, which I think, do you think in some ways that is like why you had to go back and reshoot and sort of polish plot lines a little bit more and couldn't really let it hang in this like dry world that is maybe just mostly interviews?
Yeah, what I found is like if you look at a movie like Wayne's World.
Yeah, exactly.
Wayne's World, it started as a 5-minute show, just like Between Two Ferns, but the characters were so broad and out there that people really wanted to see them off the set, and they really wanted to see them out in the world and like, wow, the things that character, because they're not like Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, right? But in Between Two Ferns, Zach is like himself. So the mind does not reel at, wow, what would he be doing out in the world, you know? So we found in tests that people were generally more interested in him interacting with celebrities than they were in the storylines, which is kind of a bummer because we shot like a lot of movie and, you know, multiple subplots with all the characters. And we would go to hotel rooms and just do all these improv scenes that would take a long time and stuff that I thought, having watched Spinal Tap, you know, like the scene where he's trying to sneak cucumber through the metal detector in his pants, you know, stuff like, it was a lot of stuff like that. And people like didn't care about any of that.
A lot of dick jokes.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
exactly. Yeah, just that particular joke. I shot that joke anywhere I could.
With Lauren, just keep going,
constantly
keep
like,
going.
why do you have a cucumber in your pants? Yeah.
But that also makes sense. That's incredibly hard material to juxtapose anything with. I mean, you have A-list celebrities getting insulted, having any other kind of scene up against that, I imagine it's nearly impossible.
It's so funny because in the first act, which could have been an hour and 15 minutes, I could feel like you have to get certain information out about the characters and you try to do it as funny as you can, but the audience, when they're watching it, just like gasps in delight when Keanu Reeves walks into the film, or, you know,
Matthew McConaughey sprayed with water.
Yeah, or, you know, Brie Larson or anyone in the first act, that it's just like, it's a real kind of humbling lesson for me. Like, I've shot all this stuff that I think is the movie, and then you kind of have to go, oh, okay, this is what people like. Let's cut it to that. And so what ended up being the movie is...
Or,
like,
you know, people would like the other stuff as well. It's just really hard to have that stuff next to it.
We used a lot of that other stuff in various cuts, and as proud as I am of it, it was all stuff that people were like, yeah. You know, so I was just ruthless, and we just cut anything that didn't get a giant laugh in any of the test screenings. And so the movie, you know, for what it's worth is that, but there's a lot of stuff that I think is interesting that got cut out that, you know, trying to direct a movie is like trying to predict the future in a way, you know what I mean? You're just like, I think this will work. And Zach and I would have bets. Like, there's a whole dream sequence that was cut out of the movie. And Zach, while we were filming it, is like, this isn't going to end up in the movie. And I'm like, come on, man, this is amazing. Look at what we're doing here. You know, you're like, your ferns are coming to life. They're chasing you. This is like gonna, you know, this is gonna be gold. Of course, like, you know, probably midway through the test screenings, people just did not care.
You know, one of the, I think, executive producers on the film with you, and also has been on it with you since the beginning, is a writer by the name of B.J. Porter, who you've basically been working with since the beginning of your career. Is that true?
Yeah, he was I met him in college, and we did a playwriting show where everyone wrote scenes for a show. Like, they wrote a scene that they were in. It was kind of like a sketch show. And so we both liked each other's sketches that we wrote.
That's an incredibly long time to be consistently working together. How does that work?
It's interesting. Yeah. It's because I think 1989 was when I met him. So yeah, it's You
got about 30 years there as a
right.
I mean, you're not necessarily a partnership because you go off and do separate things, but you work together a lot.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm generally fascinated by partnerships.
Yeah, who in your life are you working with right now that you need advice about? That's what I'm.
No one. Unfortunately. I mean, if you have anyone, no, I don't have a.
I'm looking around at everyone in this room like, who do you have an issue with?
How do I tell that person watching up there that I just can't do this anymore?
Oh, okay.
That just is not going to work out. Yeah.
Boy, they are scary.
Exactly. That's the issue.
Right.
We have time for a few questions from the audience. Who's right here?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Big fan of the movie. It was great. I loved it.
Thanks.
So I'd say that Barack Obama was one of the biggest, if not the biggest guest that I've seen on the Ferns show. But
weirdly enough, not the most views.
Well, I'm wondering from your perspective if you felt David Letterman having been one of your comedy heroes, if that was a more nerve-wracking day for you.
Ooh, they both were very, very difficult days. Not in terms of them being difficult, but they were just, you never know what's going to happen. And again, it's like trying to predict the future, and you just like try to come as prepared as possible. I would say I was maybe more amped on the Obama day in a way of just like the stakes were higher. If David Letterman were to flip out on the movie and hate the experience. That would be personally crushing for me, but the movie wouldn't have been ruined by it. But when we were in the White House, it was such a high pressure kind of situation where if I messed it up, not only is the opportunity lost, but all of the money that was spent like getting everyone there would be gone. And that one was not actually going all that well. And so while it was happening, I was in my head going into damage control and just sort of like editing in my head, going like, okay, I can cut that joke out because it didn't work. I can do this because it didn't work.
Why wasn't it going well?
It was kind of not. I was told that the president is a one and done guy. Like he would do one take and that would be it, And I was kind of like, well, what if we did another take though? And they said, why would you do another take? And I noticed they were used to dealing with news organizations, and they're like, what? He says what he's going to say, and you put it out, and that's it, But so it was just they hadn't really hit into a groove until about halfway through the first take, and then halfway through the first take, we're supposed to have 45 minutes with him. So 5 minutes in, they say he has to leave, and by the way, they've told me not to speak to him directly. That I'm supposed to talk. They said if you really need another take, please try not to need another take, but give me a nod, and I'll nod to the president, and he trusts me. Right, so I'm in there like going. They say he has to go, and I'm like, okay, well, we shot for 7 minutes, and it, half of it maybe didn't work, but we'll do this. They're like, this is fine. We can put it together, and they end it, and then the president. I'm expecting him to turn to his guy, right? He just turns right to me, and he says, "Well, how'd I do?" And everyone like looks at me, and I can feel this guy's like, daggers being, looked at me. And I said, well, to be honest, Mr. President, I thought midway through it got so good and you guys were really on fire. I would love to retake the first half with that same energy, but I'm told you have to leave. And he kind of pauses and goes, let's go again. And I was just like, oh my God, this has saved it. Oh, thank God. And then that take was like amazing, and that's the one that we basically use in the thing,
What did his aide say to you, or what kind of look did he give you when you...
At that point, I didn't need the aide, so I never talked to him again. I was like, all right, stiff arm guy. Me and him, we got something going on.
Did you, during the 2016 campaign, were you guys ever approached to do it for Trump?
No. No, actually, Hillary Clinton really wanted to do it. That was... A lot of times when you hear someone is a fan who wants to do it, I don't believe them because they're always lying. And
it's like a publicist line, and then the person shows up and they have no idea.
Well, not only that, or they'll cancel right before you're about to do it because they've never told the person what it is. And they're, for instance, like, Oprah Winfrey. Oh yeah, Oprah's a big fan. She really wants to do this. It'll happen in 2 days. And then the next day you hear, oh, they put it in front of Oprah and she nixed it. It's like, you mean she hadn't heard about it? Well, we've been rearranging our lives just to do this. But Hillary Clinton really wanted to do it, and we were like, yeah, sure she did. And then we got on, and everyone made it clear that she like personally really wanted to do it, So, and then she said that.
Was there a sense of, when you had Obama on, he was already president. It was for the healthcare exchange to promote that. Mm-hmm. When you had Hillary on, it was because she was campaigning to be president against Donald Trump, who is, a malignant asshole who is like running the country into the ground. And so I'm wondering if it felt like the stakes were even higher. Like how much because I'm assuming, forgive me for assuming you were like in some capacity like a supporter of Hillary at the time. So it's like what can we do here?
I don't think we thought the stakes were that high, honestly, because it seemed like the reason we did it was we wanted to do everything we could to make sure that whatever is happening now wasn't happening.
Yes, wasn't going to happen. Yeah,
but but it didn't seem that high. We were kind of like we even almost didn't do it because they wanted certain conditions, like they wanted her to see all the questions and stuff like that. And we said, nah, that's not interesting to us, because I kind of think like politicians in general are better when they're not scripted, because if you ever see a politician on a late night show, it's just so fake, and all you can hear
So
are
boring. It's
you can hear their speechwriters, going over every joke and finding the least offensive one, and I just we're not interested in that. So
like the host makes a joke and they laugh and then go, "That reminds me of a young man that I met in small town Ohio." And you're like, "Oh, it doesn't. That doesn't make any sense."
It's so terrible. So I just didn't want to do something like that. So I said, "Oh, we just won't do it then." And they came back and said, "No, she really wants to do it. Okay, she'll improv it with you." And she's very charming in it. I think like she's way better improv. Like that's how I
smart person.
I personally think that the one thing that Trump hit on that other people should do is people should just improv their speeches. Like people seriously are tired of all these like Pokemon go to the polls, like all these canned lines and stuff. People just want to see people being real. Yes, that's haunted my.
Who said that? Was that
Hillary Clinton said that? Yeah. Look it up. It's excruciating.
No, I vaguely remember that now, and I'm just happy that it's only vaguely that I remember it because it's a nightmare.
Yeah, but honestly, I think he comes off as real because he's up there just kind of going off the cuff, and I think more people should do that because if you sort of, I think people love The West Wing because of that. Like all these people seem so smart off the top of their heads, and that's what people kind of want from these types of people is for them to be smart and capable and in the moment.
Or just off the top of their head.
That's where people would rather they be off the top of their heads than smart and off the top of their heads or canned and smart. Yeah.
Who? I mean, would you say that Obama was the person who made you the most nervous that you shot with?
I think. I mean. It can be really nerve-wracking when both the stakes are high. I think the Mcconaughey one was really tough.
Was that because you had a sense that this was going to be the opening of the movie?
We knew it was. Yeah, we knew it was the opening. It was always written to be the opening of the movie. We needed a big Hollywood star to do it, and it's a major stunt that we built a giant water tank in a huge studio for. And we couldn't find anyone to do it, and we had to give the studio back the next day because Glow was going to shoot there, and they shoot all their wrestling stuff in this giant studio, right? And so then we hear Matthew McConaughey wants to do it, but he won't commit, for a while, and finally he commits at the last minute, but very limited amount of time. I think 2 hours maybe to do all that. And so the stakes are very, very high at that point, and a giant amount of the budget goes into it. And that's really where I feel the most nervous is like, not is someone going to be a weirdo or anything, but just can we accomplish what we need to accomplish and have it be funny? Because
we're going to make the day.
It's making the day, but also making it funny, because you can always make the day for whatever reason, but if you don't get the funny stuff, then why are you even doing it? You know what I mean? So you have to make the day while making sure to leave time for being funny. And that's what I found on the first movie I did, the Mr. Show movie, is like, yeah, you make the days, but if no one has time to improv and have fun, you're making a comedy movie, which is like people being silly. So
you mean Run, Ronnie, Run?
Run, Ronnie, Run, yeah. So like every scene in that, I think we could only do as many as 2 takes because you had to make the day. Yeah. And that's not important, I found. Like I would rather either go over or cut scenes or whatever, as long as to give people the chance to mess around and do what's fun in a comedy, which is like people having fun. So when you watch the Between Two Ferns movie, I mean, everyone's just having fun all the way through it, and I hope that sort of spirit shines through.
Can I ask? I mean, I love Run, Ronnie, Run.
Okay.
We were talking about Mr. Show a little bit before we started because discovering Mr. Show for me in high school and college was just like, oh my God, comedy can be this. This is amazing.
Same for me, yeah. I was a big fan before I went on the show.
And there's always been talk about the problems of Run, Ronnie, Run and what happened on that movie. For some reason, that movie works for me. I think I just had seen it at the right time.
Yeah. Were you like 15 or something?
I think I was probably like 19 or something, and I hadn't also seen all of Mr. Show yet. So there were sketches.
It was just a new thing, yeah.
What was it like? What is that like when you're on set and you have to do this thing? Like you got to make the day. Was everybody, all the comedians who are in the movie, be like, no, we can be funnier. We can do this.
I think it was a lot of our first experience with that type of thing, and we just did what we were told, and you know, the people in charge were like, no, this is the way it's going to be. We've made the schedule, and there's one scene in there where Bob riffs something that's so funny, and funnier than anything that we put in the script, right? When we shot it, the script was already a year old, and we all felt stale about it, you know. But there was one scene where he riffed something, and I was like, Oh my God, that was so funny. And
That's in the movie?
That's in the movie, yeah.
Can I
And
ask which?
It's all about a nickel holder.
Yeah.
Bob just riffed it in the moment. He's like, it holds 1 nickel. Yeah. And it made me laugh so much harder than anything else in the movie. And I was like, that's what the movie should be. That's what the TV show was everyone goofing around and having fun. And so I said, if I ever direct a movie, I'm going to make sure that there's enough time on the schedule that people can just goof around and laugh and have fun. And like every single day on this movie, until it got really hard, was just people goofing around and having fun. I think you can see that.
I will say, in defense of Run, Ronnie, Run, the moment where Jill gets the chip from the blender shot into her chest and blood comes out still makes me laugh.
Oh, I remember
hysterically.
that.
Yeah, the thought of it makes me laugh.
It's an infomercial or something? I can't really remember.
It's the introduction of Bob's character. He's doing the infomercial for the fooderator, which turns vomit back into food.
Yeah. The scene that I was in, there was a big fight about the blood. Look, we're talking about things that are 20 years old at this point, but like, it was so frustrating because it was a parody of Survivor where everyone turned into cannibals.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's got to be.
Was Dave Foley in that
I think so.
scene? Was he like the host of Survivor or something like that? Yeah.
So I just wrote it and I was like, look, the important part about this is it's got to be super comically bloody. It's got to be like over the top. And then we got there and the prop master hadn't made any blood. And I was like, well, this isn't funny anymore. And the director's like, there shouldn't be blood in this. It would just be gross. And I was like, wait a minute, we had all these conversations about the tone and now it's being switched. So they compromised and added a little blood, but it's just not what it could be. It should be like incredibly gross, but I don't know. We're talking about a movie that never even came out. So
No, that is true. It didn't come out, but that is also like a great example of somebody being like, no, like if I force the prop master to now get this blood,
take a long time.
It'll take a long time.
We can't
The
do
financiers, the producers are going to get
4 in
mad
the
at me as a
morning.
director. They're not going to hire me again later.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
No, it really, you can psych yourself out when you're making a movie, I found, and just kind of go along with everything and be like, okay, well, if you say so, if you say that's how a movie is done, that's good. I mean, this movie, no one on the crew had ever done a movie like this. I would say at most our customer, Erica Rice, she did Comedy Bang Bang for like 3 years. So she knew how insane it can get, but it's just, you got to have faith that you're doing the right thing and you have a plan for it. And even though I didn't know what the plan would be in terms of like what we would need in editing, at least like the movie's funny and people like it. So all is forgiven at this point, but yeah.
Forgive me for having done like enough research to know a movie from 20 years ago that didn't even come out, but I know that you've directed some of Comedy Bang Bang. Is this the first feature film that you've directed?
Yeah. So I never directed any of Comedy Bang Bang, but
okay.
I did, I directed or co-directed the Michael Bolton special, which I believe we talked to you about a few years ago. Michael Bolton's Big Sexy Valentine's Day, which I did with the Lonely Island guys. And then I did a couple of episodes of TV.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, this is the first film I did. Yeah, I did the Michael Bolton thing to practice because I knew I was doing this. So I said to Akiva Schaffer at the Lonely Island, I was like, we were talking about doing the Michael Bolton thing. I was like, could we co-direct it? Because I would really like to like get some experience behind the camera. So it really...
That's amazing that he was... Like, yeah, of course.
Well, yeah, we were doing it together. So he's like, yeah, that's a really good idea. He was very supportive. He's like, yeah, you should. And then we had...
Yeah, we'll share the workload. That sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. And then, the days got so crazy on that. And he's just sitting in the back, like watching me do stuff. But that one was going to be, I was going to direct all of the Comedy Bang Bang-esque stuff in the studio. And he was going to do all the cinematic stuff. And then it just kind of turned, I had a vision for the end, which was all this kind of cinematic like stuff based on like old gangster movies and stuff. So I ended up doing all that, which gave me a lot of confidence for this, actually.
So before I go to the audience, one last question. I'm sure you've answered this before since the inception of the show in 2008, and I can't believe that I just realized it after watching the movie and the theme song was going on in my head. Yes. And I was going like, how do I know that? Because now I'm doing the rest of it without it appearing. And it's Taxi Driver, which I've seen a bajillion times. Yeah. So where did you guys find this version of Bernard Herrmann's Taxi Driver theme, and what made you use it?
It is Bernard Herrmann.
Oh, it is?
It's from the actual soundtrack. So what happened was we just put it together for this sketch pilot we were doing. And when you're doing a pilot, you don't have to pay for anything. So just suddenly it had theme music on because our editor put it on. and I was like, oh, that's funny. It's kind of Muzak-y, kind of elevator music sort of sounding.
Actually from the score? Because it is a Muzak version of it.
Yeah, it's at the very end of the score. It's like the last track on the CD or whatever. So he put it up there, and I did not know it was I just thought it was some random lounge music thing that he had picked. And then over the past 10 years, it's become so associated with Between Two Ferns and become such a headache for me. And so much of our budget went to paying for it. And
Really?
But it's part of the show.
Did you have to end up paying? I mean, once you started putting it online, did you have to pay for it then as well?
I don't know exactly about that, but I remember the first time that we really had to address it was the Comedy Central special, the internet is sort of the Wild West. You can do whatever.
Basically until someone tells you to take it down.
Something like that. I don't even know the deal, but the Comedy Central thing, we definitely had to pay for it. So, on the movie, we had to re-record it. So our composer, Alex Werman, did his version of that song with our band as well as all the music in the movie. And but it's a huge problem. Every single year it comes up. I don't want to exacerbate it by having the estate of Bernard Herrmann watch this either.
Well, they're huge fans of Build. They're watching right now. Yeah. A few questions from the audience. Right here.
During your time writing for the 4th season of Mr. Show, how did you learn what your strengths were? What were they? And what valuable lessons did you take away from that you may have used throughout your career?
I would say the two most valuable lessons I learned were I went into Mr. Show and I remember talking to my friend Andy Kindler, who's a comedian, and I was saying, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be very good in the room because I'm more of a craftsman. Like I take a long time and I write these like intricate jokes, right? And that's what I thought my career was. And then the first day, Bob Odenkirk turned to me. We had just read a sketch that someone else had written and said, okay, what do you think? And I got very nervous and I just kind of like blurted out whatever I thought of. And he was like, yeah, very smart. Okay, great. And it gave me confidence. I was like, oh, wow. I guess maybe what I have to say is meaningful to these people for whatever reason, but I thought I was just kind of hide in the background. And that's a big thing is if you ever get hired on a show, they're paying for your brain. And so I've employed writers who recede into the background and don't want to talk, and it's worthless. You know what I mean? Like I need to hear what you are going to say. And
by the time that you end up writing the sketch or the pilot or not the pilot or the episodes, so much craftsmanship has been done by the entire room.
Yes.
That you alone going to write it I hate to say you're filling in bullet points, but
no,
it's not
I used to think that you're
that
I would be the author of sketches, right? The sole author, and they would be these lovingly put together things. And television is not like that. On Comedy Bang Bang, we had anywhere between 6 to 8 writers at a time, and it's a total group effort. Everyone is just throwing out lines all the time. Bob encouraged us never to put our name on sketches. He's like, because then it's yours. Like like this, we're all writing this together. So that was really important. Then the other thing that's really important is they would get upset with you if you took too long to write something because I remember one writer wrote something for 3 days and Bob got really mad. He's like, God damn it. And he's like, yeah, well, what am I supposed to do now? You love this thing. You've been staring at it for three days. You should have written it in 3 hours, and then you wouldn't care, and I could, tell you what's wrong with it, and we get to work. But now I have to worry about your feelings, And it's a good point because your comedy is inherently silly, and it's stupid, and there is no reason to write anything, be it if you're doing stand-up, be it if you're doing a sketch. There's no reason to labor over this kind of stuff. I mean, write the first draft as quickly as you can and then labor over it. Like, if you're doing stand-up, just get up on stage and riff about stuff and then go, oh, wow, that was really interesting. And then you can start to, refine it and hone it. And the same thing is true of sketch. Just get it out because jokes are dumb and they're not going to be better if you spend 3 days on them. Like, you look at all these Simpsons jokes that you love, like the I'm seeing double 4 Krusties. Yeah. And I used to think like, what a genius. He sat there and looked up cliches and then, figured out, no, he probably riffed it in the room, just goofing around with his buddies. So
Well, it goes back to Zach saying, I'm not as fat as you think I am, and breaking the seat when he falls down. It's silly.
Yeah, that was in the moment. And yeah, like the silly stuff. And I don't even mean tonally silly necessarily, of like, you can be satirical. And, that was another thing I learned, if I could divert for a second.
Sure, of course.
But, those guys really taught me the fact that when you are doing comedy, it is always preferable and always better to be saying something when you're doing it, and to be satirical rather than just parodying or offensive just to be offensive. I would pitch some things, or like we would be riffing something while we were writing, and I'd go, "Oh, that's so funny, Bob. You got to do that on the show." And he'd say, "What are we trying to say, though?" And so we always tried to be able to back up whatever sketch we had with a point, be it however small. If you could back up your sketch and say, "Well, this is what I'm trying to say," then you could defend it. And if you were just being offensive because like you thought a certain word was funny or something, then it would always be like, "No, take it back. Like, do another draft." And we would hammer out in the room. We would just talk about our feelings about stuff. Like, we would talk about the news of the day and talk about it for an hour and how we felt about it until someone said the funny thing that made you go, "Oh, that's the take." So, yeah, that's the third thing that I think. I use those three all the time.
Which I imagine happens a lot in writers' rooms.
Yeah, it really is. As stupid as Comedy Bang Bang, the television show, is, you'd be surprised at how much we constantly talked about what we were trying to say on it, and constantly tried to make things thematically meaningful, rather than just like, "Hey, it's a parody of the X-Men." Well, okay, but what are you trying to say while you parody the X-Men? That turns it into satire, So
then you're just Mad TV if you're not saying
Exactly,
anything. No offense
yeah.
to Mad TV, everybody.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you can combine, yes, we all want to have fun and do a fun parody of a comic book thing, but if we can also say something about the world and how we feel about a certain issue while we're doing it, that ultimately is going to make something elevate.
Did you always want to be, you are in front of the camera and you were on Comedy Bang Bang and you are the host of the podcast, but you often...
Thank you.
That
wasn't a compliment. It was just information. Okay.
But you often, it seems like, are very much okay with giving the spotlight up to your favorite actors or your favorite comedians, be it directing this or directing the Michael Bolton special. Even on the podcast, it's like giving the ability to do different characters to your friends sometimes rather than the host.
Yeah.
When did you become comfortable with that, or was that always a part of who you knew you were going to be?
You know
as
what?
an entertainer?
I just like putting stuff together. So yeah, I started out as a comedian and thought, that I was going to have my own show and stuff, and then.
Well, you did and do.
Oh no. No, but I really, just doing this movie, my representatives would say like, "Hey, are you writing a part for yourself? Make sure you write a part for yourself." And I just couldn't wrap my mind around it, because I was just like, yeah, but there's this funny person over here who would do it so much better. I wrote a part for myself in the Michael Bolton thing, and that was really fun. And like Akiva directed it and just like literally made me improv for an hour for something that turned out to be 20 seconds, and that was really fun and I really liked doing it. But when I was in charge of this, I just kind of felt a responsibility like, no, I know so many funny people. Let me just do what I'm doing. And it's so hard to do that it's, I didn't need to be in front of the camera at this, because I'm already trying to do, so many things just directing it.
Do you think if you had written a part for yourself, like Zach would have made fun of you on the day that you had to walk on set,
Probably, yeah.
come off camera, being like, "Okay, my turn to be on camera"?
Well, there's a little bit of that, but like I could have done one of the waiter parts maybe or something like that. But really, like there's one line in here where Lauren is talking to the waiter.
Never seen a chicken wear clothes?
Yes, and that was
maybe my favorite line in the movie.
And if I had played the waiter, it never would have happened, because that was one that I like shouted out from the from the sideline, like, "Say, I'd never seen a chicken wear clothes," So it's like I had a lot of stuff to do during this. I didn't need to be like trying to show off in front of the camera.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hi.
You're standing.
Yeah.
Hi.
So I love comedy, and I do comedy too.
Oh, great.
What is the best advice that you ever got in comedy?
I think that if I could have paid a little more attention at the beginning of my career to, I got semi-diverted to thinking sort of like what I was talking to you about, but thinking that I should really write the stuff that I was doing on stage and have it be intricately written. And I didn't pay enough attention to being in the moment. And I think comedy, what kind of comedy do you do? Do you do stand-up comedy? I think stand-up comedy for me, the best stand-up comedy is a conversation with the audience. It's not a performance. And for a while I treated it like a performance where I was like someone to be looked at. And I think if you can drop that and you can just get rid of any preconceptions of how it's going to happen or what you're going to say, just kind of have an idea of what you're going to talk about. If you can talk to the audience and use and I'm not saying they're talking at you the entire time saying like, that is funny, keep going. I just mean their laughs are kind of a conversation and you can adjust and modulate based on whatever they're laughing. You're going to find so much more coming out of that sort of energy than you will putting together a showcase performance that people watch. And I think it'll be ultimately more rewarding for you.
Between Two Ferns, the movie is on Netflix now. Came out on Friday.
And everyone's seen it.
Everyone's seen it. Everyone who's going to watch it has watched it.
Oh, dear.
No.
Please don't say that.
I've watched
it. Watch it by now. Don't bother.
And I've watched the bloopers a couple times as well at the end. I think they're amazingly funny. I think
I've been hearing people saying they've been watching it 3 times. I mean, you know, look, and that's not everybody. Some people hate it, I'm sure, but
some people haven't watched it yet.
Right. But to have some people, I wanted to make the kind of movie that I watched as a kid, like Airplane, The Naked Gun, Monty Python, The Holy Grail, you know, just a movie that I would rewatch over and over because it had really funny stuff that hit me. And a lot of people are saying that this is one of those for them. So that's really cool for me. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. It reminded me of the comedies from when I was a kid as well, that if I was like
Run,
13,
Runny, Run.
like Run, Runny, Run, even though you probably don't feel that way.
No.
Scott Aukerman, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.